In the winter of 1895, a labourer in Dorset watched the frost close every road out of his village and kill the livestock in the fields for 9 weeks straight. By spring, his wife and 4 children were alive, fed, and warm without spending a single penny. Everything they needed, his grandmother had taught him before he was 10. But every skill on this list was taken from your family. Number 8 belonged to every parish in England for 1,000 years, until the government handed it to men who now charge you monthly for what they destroyed. Number 4 was so effective that the industry which replaced it spent a century making sure you never learned it existed. These 25 skills were not forgotten because they stopped working. They were buried because every one of them was bad for someone's quarterly profit. Number 25. Potting meat under rendered fat. Your great-grandmother stood in a stone-floored kitchen in the autumn of 1863, pressing cooked pork into a stoneware pot with her knuckles. She poured hot rendered lard over the top. She watched it cool and set into a thick, white seal. That meat stayed edible for 3 months in her larder without a single watt of electricity. The technique is called potting. You cooked the meat thoroughly, shredded or pressed it into earthenware, seasoned it with mace and black pepper, then sealed it under a layer of clarified fat 1/4 of an inch thick. The fat excluded air. Without air, bacterial growth slowed to almost nothing. A potted joint prepared in October lasted until January. The Food Standards Agency now classifies home-potted meat as a high-risk product. Yet a 2017 study published in the Journal of Food Science confirmed that fat-sealed preservation at cool larder temperatures between 8 and 12 degrees Celsius inhibited pathogenic growth as effectively as modern vacuum packing. She had a cold larder and a family fed through winter. That was the only evidence she ever needed. Number 24. Limewashing interior walls. Today, a British family spends an average of £90 a year on cleaning products for kitchens and bathrooms. Antibacterial sprays, mold removers, disinfectant wipes. Your great-grandmother spent nothing. She mixed Quicklite lime with water in a bucket and painted it onto her walls twice a year. Lime wash is naturally alkaline, with a pH above 12. At that level, bacteria, mold spores, and fungi cannot survive on the surface. It was antimicrobial before the word existed. Victorian hospitals, dairies, and slaughterhouses were required by law to lime wash their walls under the Public Health Act of 1875. The practice worked so well that it was mandated. Then the paint industry arrived. By 1960, lime wash had been replaced entirely by emulsion paint. Emulsion is not antimicrobial. It traps moisture. It feeds mold. Her walls fought infection. Your walls harbor it. Number 23. Coppicing woodland for a permanent fuel supply. Your great-grandfather walked into a hazel wood outside his village every November and cut a dozen poles from the same stool his grandfather had cut from 40 years before. He did not kill the tree. He coppiced it. The stool sent up new shoots, and within 7 to 10 years, those shoots were thick enough to cut again. A well-managed coppice rotation across 2 acres of hazel or sweet chestnut could provide a family with enough firewood and bean poles indefinitely. Not for one winter, for every winter. The woodland regenerated itself because it was designed to be cut. Nobody needed to explain sustainability to him. He was living it. His fuel grew back. Yours does not. Number 22. Fermenting vegetables in stoneware crocks. In the autumn of 1871, your great-grandmother packed shredded cabbage into a tall stoneware crock with 2 tablespoons of coarse salt per pound of vegetable. She pressed it until the brine rose above the surface. She placed a cloth over the top and set a stone on it. Within 3 weeks, the cabbage had fermented into sauerkraut that would last 6 months without refrigeration. The process is lactofermentation. The salt draws water from the vegetable. The resulting brine creates an anaerobic environment where lactobacillus bacteria thrive and harmful bacteria cannot. The food preserves itself. A 2018 study from the University of Leipzig found that traditionally lacto-fermented vegetables contained probiotic cultures comparable in diversity to commercial supplements, costing £30 a bottle. She made it from cabbage and salt. It cost almost nothing. Number 21. The death of the cottage food economy. This one is not a single skill. It is a system that was dismantled. Before 1860, every village in England operated a cottage food economy. Your great-grandmother made butter, cheese, potted meat, pickles, preserves, and fermented vegetables in her own kitchen and sold the surplus at market or directly to her neighbors. She needed no license, no inspection, no regulation. The food was fresh, it was local, and the money stayed in the village. Then came the Sale of Food and Drugs Act of 1875. It was written in response to genuine industrial adulteration. Factories were cutting flour with chalk and milk with water. But the law did not distinguish between a Birmingham factory adulterating bread for profit and a Wiltshire grandmother selling butter she had churned that morning. The same regulations applied to both. By 1900, the cost of compliance had driven most cottage producers out of the market. By 1950, the Women's Institute was one of the last organizations still teaching domestic food preservation, and even they were subject to environmental health inspections. By 2000, the average British family bought every gram of food from 4 supermarket chains. The cottage economy did not die because it lost to competition. Regulation killed it in silence. The market for commercially processed food in the United Kingdom is now worth over £200 billion a year. That market did not exist while your great-grandmother was selling butter to her neighbor for threepence. Somebody made money when she stopped. Follow the money. It always tells the story. And if you think that is the worst example of something free being turned into something billable, wait until you hear number 8. Number 20. Rainwater harvesting from slate and stone roofs. In 1894, a council in the West Riding of Yorkshire proposed metering rainwater collection from domestic rooftops. The proposal was abandoned after public outcry. In 2023, water companies in England reported combined annual revenues exceeding £14 billion. Your great-grandmother collected rainwater from her slate roof into a stone cistern beside the back door. She used it for washing, for the garden, and after passing it through a sand and charcoal filter, for drinking. A typical cottage roof of 600 square feet in a county receiving 30 inches of annual rainfall collected approximately 11,000 litres a year. Free. Nobody banned rain. Not yet. Number 19. Building with cob, stone, and earth. Your great-grandfather in Devon did not buy the walls of his cottage. He built them from the ground beneath his feet. Cob, a mixture of clay, subsoil, straw, and water, was trodden by foot, layered in courses 18 inches thick, and left to cure between lifts. He needed no cement, no timber frame, no mortgage. The material was free. The labor was his own and his neighbor's. A cob cottage built in 1840 is still standing today because the walls are 3 feet thick, naturally insulating, and breathable. His children lived in that house. His grandchildren lived in it after them. He asked nobody for permission to build it. He filled no forms. He paid no architect. The walls stood for 180 years. The paperwork would have stopped him before the first course was laid. Number 18. Smoking meat and fish in the chimney. In the Scottish Highlands, your great-grandmother hung fillets of herring on hooks inside the chimney breast and left them above a slow peat fire for 3 days. The smoke deposited phenolic compounds onto the surface of the fish. Those compounds are antimicrobial. The heat drove out moisture. The result was a protein source that lasted months without refrigeration and weighed a fraction of the fresh fish, making it easy to store and transport. A single chimney could smoke enough herring in an autumn to feed a family of 4 through a Highland winter. The technique required no equipment that was not already part of the house. She already had a fireplace, and the fireplace did both jobs. Number 17. How the Victorians built without permission and why you cannot. In 1858, your great-grandfather could wake up on a Monday morning, mark out a foundation on his own land, and begin building a house. He needed no planning application, no building control officer, no approved inspector, no structural engineer's certificate, and no 6-month wait for a decision letter from the council. He built with local stone, local timber, and local knowledge passed down through his family. The house had thick walls, deep eaves, a root cellar below, and a chimney that drew properly because his father had taught him how to angle the flue. The cost was his labor and his materials, most of which came from within a mile of the site. The first meaningful national building regulations arrived with the Public Health Acts of the 1870s, focused initially on drainage and sanitation in cities. But through the 20th century, regulation expanded relentlessly. The Town and Country Planning Act of 1947 made it illegal to build any permanent structure without local authority permission. Building regulations grew from a pamphlet into a library. Today, a self-build project in England requires planning permission, building regulations approval, structural calculations, energy performance certificates, and compliance with Part L, Part B, Part F, Part M, and Part O of the building regulations. The average cost of obtaining planning permission and building control sign-off before a single brick is laid now exceeds £15,000. That is before materials, before labor, before the foundation is dug. Your great-grandfather built a house that still stands. You cannot legally build a garden shed over 15 square meters without filling out a form. The knowledge is not lost, the permission is. Number 16. Tallow candles and rush lights. Your great-grandmother saved every scrap of beef and mutton fat from Sunday roasts through the autumn. In November, she rendered it slowly in a pot over the fire, strained it through muslin, and dipped wicks of twisted cotton into the liquid tallow until they built up a candle thick enough to burn for 4 hours. A single bullock's worth of suet fat, rendered properly, produced enough candles to light a cottage through the darkest 3 months of the year. Cottagers who could not afford even tallow made rush lights, peeled rushes dipped in any available fat, which burned for roughly 45 minutes each. The fuel was a waste product from the meal. The light cost nothing. The skill required nothing more than patience and a steady hand. But the next skill on this list was worth more than light. It was worth a pharmacy. Number 15. Hedgerow medicine. In the October of 1878, your great-grandmother walked a mile of hedgerow outside her village in Somerset and came home with enough medicine to treat her family through winter. Elderberries, simmered with honey into a syrup for coughs and fever. Willow bark, stripped and dried for headaches and pain. It contains salicin, the compound Bayer later synthesized into aspirin in 1897, and patented meadowsweet, brewed into tea for stomach complaints. Rose hips, boiled into a paste for vitamin C when fresh fruit was unavailable from November to April. A 2019 meta-analysis published in the journal Nutrients found that elderberry supplementation reduced the duration of upper respiratory infections by an average of 2 days. She knew it worked. She did not need the meta-analysis. She had 5 healthy children and a hedgerow. Number 14. Keeping bees for honey, wax, and medicine. Today, a jar of raw British honey costs between £8 and £12 in a farm shop. A block of beeswax for candle making costs £6. Propolis tincture, sold as a natural antiseptic, costs £15 for 30 millilitres. Your great-grandmother kept a straw skep behind the cottage and harvested all 3 for nothing. A single productive hive in a good year yielded between 25 and 45 pounds of surplus honey, enough to sweeten a family's food, brew mead, and preserve fruit through the winter. The wax made candles and waterproof sealant. The propolis was applied directly to cuts and grazes as an antimicrobial dressing. A 2020 study in the journal Frontiers in Pharmacology confirmed that propolis exhibits broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity against gram-positive bacteria, including Staphylococcus aureus. She had a small box and a colony. It gave her sugar, light, and medicine. She never bought any of the 3. Number 13. How herbal medicine was taken from your family. For 500 years, the treatment of common illness in rural Britain was the domain of women. Your great-great-grandmother knew which plants reduced a fever, which stopped a cough, which eased a difficult birth, and which drew infection from a wound. She learned this from her mother. Her mother learned it from hers. The knowledge was inherited, tested, and trusted across generations. The Medical Act of 1858 changed everything. The Act created the General Medical Council and established a register of approved medical practitioners. Only those who had studied at recognized institutions could legally practice medicine for payment. Those institutions, at the time, did not admit women. The village herbalist, the local wise woman, the cottage healer were not criminalized outright, but they were delegitimized. Their knowledge was reclassified from medicine to folklore. By the turn of the 20th century, the pharmaceutical industry was producing standardized drugs in factories. Aspirin, which had existed as willow bark tea for 3,000 years, was patented by Bayer in 1899. Digitalis, which your great-grandmother knew as foxglove, was extracted and sold as a pharmaceutical product. The plants were the same, the knowledge was the same, but the profit now went to a corporation instead of staying in the village. The global pharmaceutical market is now worth over £1.4 trillion. The hedgerow is still free. Nobody told you that. Number 12. The bread oven built into the cottage wall. Your great-grandmother in Herefordshire heated the brick oven beside her fireplace with a bundle of faggots once a week. She let the wood burn down to embers, raked them out, and tested the temperature with a handful of flour. If it browned in 30 seconds, the oven was ready. She slid in 6 loaves on a wooden peel. The residual heat baked the bread. After the loaves came out, she put in a fruit cake. After the cake, a rice pudding. After the pudding, she dried herbs on the cooling floor. 1 heating, 4 products. No energy wasted. A 2021 study from the University of Reading found that slow-baked sourdough bread produced at falling temperatures retained higher levels of bioavailable minerals than commercially yeasted bread baked at constant heat. She baked better bread with a pile of sticks than a factory does with a conveyor belt. Number 11. Drying and storing medicinal herbs for winter. In July and August, your great-grandmother cut bundles of lavender, thyme, sage, chamomile, and peppermint from her garden. She tied them with string and hung them from the kitchen ceiling beams, where the warmth from the range below dried them slowly over 2 weeks. Once dry, she stored them in labeled stoneware jars in her larder. Chamomile for sleeplessness, peppermint for indigestion, thyme steeped in honey for chest infections, sage gargled with warm water for sore throat. The government now promotes the exact same herbs in NHS-endorsed self-care guides. 70 years ago, the same knowledge was dismissed as superstition. Call it what you like, it was pharmacy without a till. And if you think the skills so far have been impressive, the next 10 are the ones that were deliberately taken from you. Number 10. Processing raw fleece into usable wool. In a Welsh hill cottage in the 1860s, your great-grandmother took a raw fleece from the spring shearing, washed it in the stream, carded it with hand combs until the fibers ran parallel, and spun it on a drop spindle into yarn thick enough to knit stockings, gloves, and undervests. A single fleece from a Welsh mountain sheep weighing 3 to 4 pounds yielded enough yarn for 2 pairs of thick stockings and a waistcoat. She did it every spring. Her children were warm every winter. She did not buy warmth. She made it with her hands, a comb, and a spindle. Number 9. The cottage vegetable garden and 3-year rotation. Your great-grandmother divided her kitchen garden into 3 plots and rotated her crops every year. Year 1, legumes, peas and broad beans that fixed nitrogen into the soil. Year 2, brassicas, cabbages, kale and turnips that fed on the nitrogen the legumes left behind. Year 3, roots, carrots, parsnips, potatoes and onions that broke up compacted soil. A well-managed cottage garden of just 1/10 of an acre, roughly 435 square feet per plot, produced enough vegetables to feed a family of 5 from May to March. A 2022 report from the Royal Horticultural Society found that traditional 3-year rotation improved soil fertility by up to 25% compared to continuous monoculture cropping, while reducing pest pressure without chemical intervention. She fed her family from a patch of earth smaller than a modern car park, without a supermarket or a scrap of plastic. Number 8. How water was taken from the commons and sold back to you. Your great-grandmother drank water from a village well, a spring, or a rainwater cistern. She paid nothing for it. The water was a commons, a shared resource managed by the parish and maintained by the community. It had been this way for 1,000 years. In 1989, the Conservative government privatized the water industry in England and Wales. 10 regional water authorities were sold to private investors. The water that had fallen from the sky and risen from the ground, the same water your great-grandmother drew for free, became the property of shareholders. Since privatization, water companies in England have paid out over £72 billion in dividends to shareholders. In the same period, they have discharged raw sewage into English rivers and coastal waters over 400,000 times in a single year. In 2023, every major river in England was classified as failing to meet good ecological status. Every one. Your great-grandmother drank clean water from a well maintained by her neighbors. You drink treated water from a pipe maintained by a company that pumps sewage into the river with your money and distributes the profit to its investors. The water did not stop being free. It was taken. The rainfall has not changed. The ownership has. Number 7. Thatching and natural insulation. A properly laid wheat straw thatch 12 inches thick on a Victorian cottage provided an insulation value that modern building regulations did not match until the introduction of Part L in 2006. The thatch breathed. It allowed moisture vapor to pass through, preventing the condensation and damp problems that plague modern homes, sealed with plastic vapor barriers. Your great-grandfather in Norfolk cut his own wheat, threshed it by hand, and re-thatched his roof in sections on a 7-year rotation. The material was a byproduct of the harvest. It cost nothing beyond his labor. A 2016 study from the University of Bath found that natural fiber insulation materials, including straw and sheep wool, outperformed synthetic alternatives in regulating indoor humidity levels, reducing the risk of mold growth by up to 40%. His roof kept him warm, kept him dry, and breathed like a living thing. Your roof is wrapped in plastic and still grows mold in the corners. Number 6. Making soap from wood ash and animal fat. Your great-grandmother collected hardwood ash from the fireplace every morning throughout winter. In spring, she soaked the ash in water in a wooden trough, draining the liquid, the lye, through a hole in the base. She tested the strength by floating a feather. If the feather dissolved overnight, the lye was ready. She mixed the lye with rendered tallow or lard, stirred it in an iron pot over low heat until it thickened, poured it into molds, and left it to cure for 4 weeks. The result was hard, white soap that cleaned skin, wool, linen, and kitchen surfaces. 2 ingredients, both free. Both waste products from the household itself. The fire gave the ash. The Sunday roast gave the fat. She turned rubbish into hygiene. But the next 5 items on this list are not just skills that were forgotten. They are skills that were taken, deliberately, and someone profited from every single one. Number 5. Spring boxes and gravity-fed water systems. In the hills of Cumbria and North Wales, your great-grandfather built spring boxes from flat stone and lime mortar directly over natural springs where groundwater emerged from the hillside. The box protected the source from contamination. A lead or clay pipe ran from the box downhill to the cottage by gravity alone. He needed no pump, no electricity, and no bill. A properly constructed spring box drawing from a reliable source, delivered between 2 and 5 gallons per minute. That is enough to supply a household, water livestock, and irrigate a kitchen garden. The government once encouraged this. During the Victorian era, the Labouring Classes Dwelling Houses Act of 1866 specifically promoted improved water supply to rural cottages. The water was free then. Now a spring on your own land still belongs to you in theory. In practice, abstracting more than 20 cubic meters per day requires a license from the Environment Agency. Even rain needs paperwork now. Number 4. How energy independence was taken from the British household. In 1880, your great-grandmother's cottage ran on 4 energy sources, and she paid for none of them. Wood from coppiced woodland heated the house and cooked the food. Tallow and beeswax lit the rooms after dark. The sun dried her herbs, her clothes, and her meat. The wind turned the ventilation cowl on the roof. The cottage was not connected to anything. It needed no external supply. It owed nothing to anyone. Then gas came, piped into towns from the 1820s and into villages by the 1890s. Then electricity arrived through the Rural Electrification Program after 1926. Each new connection was presented as progress, and it was, but it came with a condition that nobody discussed. You were now dependent on a supplier. You now received a bill. The average British household energy bill in 2024 exceeded £2,000 per year. That is the cost of convenience. The Victorian cottage paid nothing because the energy came from the land, the woodland, and the labor of the household itself. The energy did not get more expensive. The source was changed. Your great-grandmother burned wood that grew back. You burn gas that is extracted from beneath the North Sea by a company that posts quarterly profits in the billions. She had independence. You have a direct debit. There is a difference that the energy industry would prefer you did not understand. Number 3. Bone broth and whole animal cookery. In 1897, the British Medical Journal published a paper recommending beef tea, concentrated bone broth, as a restorative food for patients recovering from fever, surgery, and childbirth. Your great-grandmother had been making it her entire life. She never waited for a medical journal to confirm what she already knew. After the Sunday joint, she put the bones into a pot with water, a splash of vinegar, an onion, and whatever root vegetables were left in the larder. She simmered it on the back of the range for 12 to 24 hours. The vinegar drew calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus from the bones into the liquid. Nothing was wasted. The marrow was eaten on toast. The cartilage went into the broth. The rendered fat was saved for cooking, candles, or soap. A single animal carcass provided food, light, medicine, and hygiene products. She did not throw away bones. She could not afford to, and her family was healthier for it. Number 2. Saving seed from year to year. Every autumn, your great-grandmother selected the strongest plants in her garden. The tallest broad beans, the fattest peas, the last bolting lettuce. She let them go to seed. She dried the seed heads on newspaper in the kitchen. She stored them in labeled paper envelopes in a tin in the larder. In March, she sowed them. The same varieties her mother had grown. The same varieties her grandmother had grown. Each generation of seed was more adapted to that specific soil, that microclimate, that altitude, that rainfall, than any commercial packet could ever be. The modern seed industry sells you hybrid varieties that cannot be reliably saved. You buy seed every year. Your great-grandmother bought seed once. Her garden reproduced itself. Yours requires an annual subscription. She saved seed the way she saved knowledge. She passed it on. Both are worth more than anything in a catalogue. Number 1. The hands that built a life. This is not a trick. It is not a technique. It is the principle that held every item on this list together. Your great-grandmother did not buy her life. She built it. Her hands potted meat, churned butter, rendered fat, spun wool, pulled weeds, planted seed, kneaded bread, mixed lime wash, brewed medicine, and scrubbed linen. Her hands knew the weight of good soil and the texture of properly proved dough. Her hands could identify a plant by touch in the dark. She was not wealthy. She was capable. There is a distinction between the two that the modern economy has worked very hard to erase. Wealth is measured in what you can purchase. Capability is measured in what you can do without purchasing anything. Your great-grandmother was rich in capability. She could feed, house, warm, clothe, and heal her family without leaving her parish. Look at the list you have just heard. Water, collected and filtered by hand. Food, grown, preserved, smoked, fermented, and stored without electricity. Shelter, built from the earth beneath her feet. Energy, harvested from woodland that grew itself back. Medicine, picked from the hedgerow and dried from the garden. Every pillar of survival was within her reach, and not one of them arrived with a bill. Now look at a modern household. Water comes through a meter. Food comes in plastic from a chain that posted $4 billion in profit last year. The house requires a mortgage that takes 25 years to repay. Energy arrives through a pipe owned by shareholders. Medicine is dispensed at a counter after waiting 3 weeks for an appointment. Every necessity of life has been turned into a product. Every skill replaced by a service. Every act of self-sufficiency replaced by a direct debit. Your great-grandmother's hands could build a life. Ask yourself what your hands can build without a password, a payment, or permission from someone you have never met. That question is not comfortable, but it is the only one that matters. Pick one skill from this list and try it this week. Tell me in the comments what your family used to know that was never passed on. Somebody watching this right now still has the recipe book, still has the stoneware crock in the back of the cupboard. Your great-grandmother's hands are gone. The knowledge does not have to be. Start with one, the rest will follow.